So I've got just start us off with some prompts about our character, just so get the juices flowing.
Are we talking about our character or
Yeah.
in
So
general?
we're going to start with our individual character. So we're just going to talk about our characters a bit and kind of follow this thought process.
Okay.
And that'll probably open up some questions that we'll explore and stuff like that. But this is just to get us going.
Yeah.
And also we'll have good information that'll be helpful for them in making their characters, because this talks a lot about questions about the formation and kind of the process.
Okay.
So just give me a quick tidbit about your character, like a small paragraph. Who are they? What do they do? Why do they do it? Like, give me the elevator pitch of your character. Don't need to use names or anything.
We are kind of based off of like a Native American Inuit idea. So we have a very tribal feel. Family is very important and elders are valued. But at a certain time, the monks that live on our planet, you go and you spend time there so that you are actually cultured and not just like a Neanderthal type of person, kind of along lines of what happened in the movie Braveheart.
Okay.
Ta-da! That's the.
No, I mean, if you feel satisfied with that answer.
Well, I mean that's a tidbit of what my character
okay.
is.
Mine is sort of almost like for the greater good sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's never really felt like he belongs anywhere, either through his environment or through his own self-sabotage. He's kind of moved from family to family, but he does really genuinely care about the people, that belong to him as family, because it's something that often breaks for him as he tries to hold on to when he can. He ends up doing the right things for the wrong things for the right-ish reasons. He became a Sith because he saw it as a path of power, of course, as that's a common thread between all the Sith, but he also did it because he wants to get stronger for his Mandalorian family, even though he has betrayed them to do that. So he's cast aside family, which is supposed to be the most important thing to a Mandalorian, but he's doing it for family. He's okay being the black sheep, being the pariah, if it means ultimately it will help them. So helping them through his power, defeating the Jedi, who are constantly at odds with the Mandalorians. But he, of course, good intentions get twisted. The longer he does this, the deeper the rabbit hole goes. He's not so much a direct confrontational person. He's fast and he's skilled, but he's not strong. He's not particularly fast. And so he relies heavily on tactics, and when he does engage in combat and manipulation, he is much happier being the puppeteer of a situation, and he'll send someone else off to do something rather than deal with it himself, because that's just how he works. His job in the Jedi Order was a sentinel, specifically as like a kind of a political liaison between the Jedi and the planets he worked on, but with a little bit of political manipulation in there. So that's how he's used to using tools. So he'll treat other people like instruments that have a certain way to be played. That's that guy. So you mentioned yours kind of Native American-esque.
Yeah.
Braveheart-ish. So what do you like about portraying that character? Like, what are the fun parts about it?
The fun parts of it are definitely has like the confidence to be able to stand and be comfortable in who he is, and that when I'm thinking about the character, I kind of step away from worrying about all the things around, and I kind of am able just to be in the moment more than usual, because in my culture, you wear different colored cloaks based on the respect that you show for the other person. Like, if I have no respect for the other person, I'll just wear white and just go up and get rid of you. But if I have respect for you and who you are, like, I'll wear my red one, because it's like I want a good fight. Like, this is like a worthy thing. So the character lets me kind of have more focus.
All right. It's interesting. I would actually say one of the things I enjoy about my character, and this is a bit about, I suppose, suggesting on how we as individual people, our characters act as lenses throughout to the world. I like mine actually lets me sort of do the exact opposite, where I can not quite zone out a bit, but if this whole field is a chessboard to him, some of the specific details that are happening aren't important, because everything is kind of following the plan.
Yeah.
Is, oh, you know, if those two people, if one of them was supposed to kill the other one, but it happened in the opposite direction, like, I'll adjust. It'll be okay. Like, don't get stressed out over the details. Almost the exact opposite. You're saying live in the moment. My guy is looking at it from this macro view, where he's got the movie plot, and he's like, oh, you know, some details are different than what I thought, but I know who's gonna be there at the end of the movie. And and I'll figure out how to make that work out. And so, kind of, whereas I'm a very stressed person, and like I stress myself out. This persona is kind of like, and God, masks help. Masks help with this. You ever feeling nervous, get a mask. But it's, you know, with this character I like playing, it's everything's under control. Even when it seems like it isn't, it's all part of it. You can't do anything to surprise me. And that's kind of what I enjoy. Obviously, you know, the fighting aside, which is fun, but there's sort of this tactile element. I'm not just beating on someone, I'm picking them apart, and I'm using them. Like, you know, I've got a particular interaction with Jeff's character, who he's also Mandalorian, and me and him are kind of like yin-yang sort of thing, in the sense that, like, he's like, oh, Mandalorian's violence, but like I think Jedi are doing the right thing, so I'm going to try and get them to work together. Whereas my guy's sort of like, Jedi, Mandalorians, you know, they can't ever be together. Like, and so they're so close, and their stubbornness and, you know, dedication and caring about their families, that Jeff's character in mine sees kind of a mirror of what he could be if he doesn't control himself. And then my character sees in Jeff's character, like, I made this change, so can you. I just have to push you in the right direction.
It just takes a little push.
Yeah, just the right. So it's kind of the two guys are trying to. He's not trying to redeem my guy. He's trying to kill my guy, because my guy's an embarrassment, a disgrace, a traitor, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But it's also like a warning. Like, he has to kill me because he has to prove to himself that, like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's like a metaphor made physical. Whereas for me, I'm just trying to. I'm provoking him. I'm poking him. I'm trying to get him to work himself up, and use that to bring him over. Because I'm like, the dark side will take care of it. I just need to start it. I just need to push him down that hill, then gradually do the rest.
Yeah. Which is funny, because in my real life, I kind of have that, like, it's all going to work out. And then, you know, at work, it's, I know what's going to happen in the next 10 minutes. Yeah. And I give that leeway. But when I'm here, it's like, I don't have to manage anything. I don't have to worry about anything. Everybody else is doing their thing, and all I have to do is enjoy this right here. It's like my breath from life.
Something I want to talk about this later. I'm just going to, like, mention right now, just because we want to get in that kind of order. Is I really noticed there's kind of like 3, maybe 4 ways people make characters. One is, this usually happens more when they're new to character creation. They either make someone that's exactly like them, make someone that is so damn gray they don't have to make any commitment, or they make someone who's literally the exact opposite of themselves. Yeah. And all of those are equally terrible, because, well, that first one, making someone that's yourself, that's just you. You've already made that. You're not. There's no
transcendent or acting.
You're just being you.
Yeah. If you make choices in fights and decisions, you make them as you, which is
not. Yeah, like we're both like, the second one,
nothing happens.
That super morally gray area.
Yeah.
That's probably the regular person who recognizes the freedom they've been given, where they're like, I'll do what is necessary, but they don't actually commit to a higher ideal.
Yeah.
Remember I was saying before, you know, everyone has passion for what they do, even if it's a couple steps away. You know, you don't jaywalk because you're trying to follow the laws, because if you don't follow the laws, they'll come arrest you and you'll lose your freedom, and that's your survival instinct saying, don't jaywalk because, you know, A leads to B, yada yada, you'll be in jail. The gray people are kind of like, they let the passion out the window. They're like, oh, I can do anything, and I'll try to do everything. And so they don't get any.
What's that saying? If you try to be everything to everyone, you become no one to no one?
I don't know. It's apparently the jack of all trades saying is it's better to be
master of one than.
Well, no, it's a jack of all trades. It's a master of one, a master of none. Sorry, which is less foolish than a master of one, which is not quite the point. Apparently, there's a lot of idioms that have the second half cut off.
Yeah, but because they're usually not necessary.
Well, no, because they people just use them out of context. Because the jack of all trades, people use it in the context of like, oh, if you try a little bit of everything, you won't be good at anything. But the whole phrase is actually, well, no, someone who's a little bit good at everything is better than someone who's really good at one thing, which is the complete opposite way people use jack of all trades.
Yeah.
It's also the same thing for blood is thicker than water.
Okay.
I forget what the second half of the phrase is, but the way it reads is because the way people use it is that family is more important. Family is important because blood's thicker than water.
Yeah.
But if you read the rest of the phrase, it actually turns it around. It basically means, the people you choose are more important than the people you're born with.
Okay.
You'd have to look it up. The second half of the
I
phrase.
will look on it. Well, I also know that there's one other category under this is that where sometimes it's not a complete opposite of who you are, but it's like we called it like the psychological profile. It's everything that you wish you could kind of do in life.
That's halfway, or maybe even all the way. I guess in certain sense. That's the right direction.
Yeah.
Is trying to explore something that you want to explore that you can't in the real world.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
like
good.
I can't yell at every single person in the real world because you get in trouble, but if I'm in here, I can be a little more boisterous than I would in normal life.
And I think the important thing about that is when you're looking at the character isn't necessarily that behavior itself. It's like how we're talking about personalities, how you interact with the world. The character is what informs everything.
Yeah.
Is you've got those frustrations that you want to yell at people that are not doing a good job, that they're letting you down in some way, but you can't because of societal constraints.
Yeah.
But your character has the freedom to do that, and so there's something. It's not just like, oh, this character yells at everyone, because you could be yelling at people for a variety of different reasons.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important for people to realize why they want to do the things they want to do. I like you used to say, and I took this to heart, find something about yourself and just exaggerate it and see how that affects your character.
Yeah.
But anyways.
But there's also like, you can't just exaggerate. You have to take it as, and then refine it and whittle it down.
It's constant revision.
Yeah.
We'll hit on that a bit later.
Okay.
So we talk about what you like about your character. What do you hate about your character, or what do you worry about? Like the negatives. What are the negatives you associate with your character? Not in terms of like, oh, their weaknesses, but like the fact that they're a character. Like, what are the downsides of portraying them, or things you worry about the character idea itself? I can start if you want.
Yeah, go ahead, because I have aspects that it fits into a storyline that I still have some kind of area that I haven't quite figured out yet.
So my thing is I'm constantly worried that this guy is just going to turn into like a Bond villain Mary Sue. Like, oh, ha ha ha, I'm the villain, I control all the strings, like you can't beat me.
Yeah.
And I really think about, well, he's got to get in there, he's got to get his hands dirty, he still has to be human, he has to have the fallacies, like, even if he thinks he's got every move planned, he needs to reasonably fail. He can't have everything under control all the time because it isn't his story.
Yeah. I
make him as if it's his story because you are the main character of your own life, but I have to realize the context this character is created in is in the club. My previous character, the one that was the wound in the force.
Yeah.
Everything was taken from canon. It made sense in how everything was set up, but he was so strong in terms of like what he could or couldn't do, that it was almost a little unfair. We've talked to other people about this. Like, they can't be super strong, they can't be special, they can't be like the last of their kind.
Yeah.
Because nothing inherently makes them more special than any of the other people in the club.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly worried that like I'm just going to elevate him to some level where it's like, oh, he's the invincible villain.
Yeah.
In a certain respect, obviously, I'm like, I made the joke to the other Sith character people in the club, and I said, if you want to be the Sith Lord, like the top guy, fight me for it. We'll see who wins. And because I like I said, puppeteer, like head honcho, but also sort of got to be earned a little bit.
Even that statement that you just made, in the real world, it's a rude comment to make because it shows arrogance. In the context of the club and the dynamic of having a character that you're portraying, it fits because it's appropriate, and it's not being rude or anything. It's just, these are facts. These are characteristics that this person knows are true, and he believes that, and that's what makes the character have more dynamic. They're not one.
Oh yeah,
they're not one way.
I think the important thing is to realize none of these characters ever should be two-dimensional. The people are wildly different, motivations wildly different. I always say, one thing I said to you a while ago that you really seem to like was, I think, broadly speaking, Jedi, what makes them interesting is how their darkness how they interact with their darkness, how they interact with their own darkness, and for Sith, how their darkness interacts with other people's darkness, because
Yeah.
the Sith have acknowledged not even that they're evil, quote unquote, but they know they know the darkness is there. It's the dark side of the Force. They've embraced it and they use it. But whereas the light, hell, they even showed in the Clone Wars animated cartoon, one of the very last efirst was Yoda trying to figure out how to become a Force ghost, and part of it he had to fight like the dark reflection of his soul.
Yeah.
And for the first half of the fight, he was denying that it even existed. He was like, "I don't know who you are. You aren't a part of me. Like, I shun you."
Yeah.
And then he only won at the end because he said, "You know, you are part of me. You are that darkness that's always been inside of me. I accept that, but I refuse to give you any strength." And he just absorbs it back into him and defeats it, not by hiding it away, but by saying, "You are now part of me." And the fact that it took someone like Yoda, who's basically like, you probably couldn't come up with a bigger poster child for Jedi philosophy than Yoda. And so I think people, in terms of Jedis, I think they really have to kind of get away from that, like, Boy Scout. It's not Superman. That's not what this is. Superman's a Boy Scout. Nothing wrong with his philosophies.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like you are a living creature with emotions in a system that dissuades you from feeling them, or at least letting them show.
Yeah.
Letting them show in your personality.
Well, the one thing that was interesting with the Batman Superman dynamic, like Batman's even said, like, he could come in and crush all of us in a second, but he never will, because inside of him, his character core being is he's a good person. And then Bruce Wayne looks at himself, and inside, I am not. And Superman's even said, out of everybody, the only person that could kill him is Bruce Wayne. You know, and speaking of what you're saying about the light and the dark and the yin and yang, there's like old Indian folklore that says like there's two wolves inside of you, a dark one. Which one do you feed?
Which one wins? It's the one you feed.
And then I see that as incredibly arrogant, because that means that you're God.
I don't think that's quite what they mean.
So what the other side is what you were saying is, if I see the purpose of both of them, and the bad is not bad and the good is not good, I need to have some of the characteristics of what's it, always be kind, but don't get taken advantage of. Always be. There's a line.
I think Freud put it a pretty good way. So there's three components to your personality. There's your id, your ego, and your superego.
Yeah.
Your id, if I recall correctly,
as a child.
Your id is kind of more primal. It's selfish. It's the shoulder devil.
Okay.
The superego is your morals, like what's right, what's proper, and then your ego is the mediator between the two that balances them and like streams them together and integrates them.
Yeah.
In that context, it is the shoulder devil, superego is the angel, and then you are the ego. I think to be a healthy person, broadly speaking, and to make a good character, I think you have to realize that they aren't all inherently bad. As a person, it's you are who you are.
Yeah.
There's no point in fighting it. You have to make peace with it.
That's
why I got the ring that says there is no peace. Peace is a lie. There's only passions. Because I'm an individual that burns really hot or really cold, and I can't live by a floor. People are like, just calm down, and everything will be fine. Like, I can't do that because I'm a very passionate person. I get worked up, and so I've had to realize that, and like, I can feel the fire, and I have to realize it's not anyone's fault. When I get really mad, any amount of mad, I get really mad.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's not their fault. So like, give me a moment. I'm good. All right, let's go on.
It's funny that you have that mantra, because I have the Assassin's Creed one that's the core of my real world personality is nothing is true, everything is permitted. So it's interesting that the dynamic of having something like that.
And I think for characters, you have to realize that, like and it is a reiterative process. You think of something, you kind of play it around with your head, play around with other people, and you go back and you revise it. Also, like being a person. So now that we kind of talked about this, so what do you hate or dislike or worry about for your character as an entity?
I'm sure we're going to get into it later, but like, you have to have likable villains even on a certain level, like a little bit.
People have to be invested.
The one thing that I worry about with, it's sometimes hard to, I don't want to say keep this stoic face, but to have everything metered. Like I have that internal conflict of No, I actually like that about my character. Well,
It's kind of work
you know,
with it, like.
I think the problem is that I don't have a problem with my character. It's almost like one of those. Like,
Nothing you're worried about them becoming or what they were, or like something
know,
you feel may be lacking.
If I didn't care about him, I would just say like the stuff that happened with his family and having like his best friend killed in front of him, I could see it just completely going off the rails and just becoming like
Outrageous.
a dark overlord. Because there are times like I just want to like let that side take over, but it's weaving the story sometimes is very difficult. Of like, what line would you do? Especially like if I'm talking to someone in the club and I'm like, oh my god, I would kill you so quickly in a fight, and I'm like, that's one of the things I struggle with, because I'm like, I would never fight you because you're dead. Like there was absolutely like three moves.
So something you hate about your character is that the character himself and the club environment, the meta of the club environment.
Yeah.
A lot of people fight for different reasons. You fight different people because it's interesting and fun.
Yeah.
Those don't mesh because your guy wouldn't just fight all these people. He'd
Yeah,
be like,
yeah.
I'm not going to deal with you. I wouldn't deal with you. I wouldn't deal. But you can't just not fight them because then you might as well not show up at the club.
Well, I mean, if you showed the hallway thing, you just saw that someone punched me and they were just eviscerated like so fast that the saber didn't even like you. It wasn't like, because that's what I would do. Like it's like you're.
He's not a showman.
Well, I want what I want when I want it, and if you're in my way, I'll kill you. Like that's what I've always had as a core value of my character.
So he plays, following true to the character, plays against the entertainment situation you're in, the reality of the club as a club.
Well, yeah, that's kind of like I wanted to. If this was ever to happen, I want to have like a gladiatorial thing. Like I'd be the retired champion that comes back, but I don't want to be like that arrogant, you know.
So, we talked about kind of what we like about our characters.
Yeah.
I guess how did the character for you? How did your character start? How did they change? Like, what were they? Because the characters are never who they once were. What did he kind of start as? Like, how did he change? Like, kind of, was he almost far enough away that he could have just been an entirely different character when you first started making him? Like,
Well, the cool thing is that Nova Strike, the name actually came up from Knights of the Old Republic when they asked me to have, what's your character's name?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, what's more deadly and devastating in the world than a supernova explosion? I was like, okay, Nova. Well, that would be like a Nova Strike. Oh, Nova Strike. And then that's kind of how the name came about. And funny, like Novas in Spanish, which I found out means no deal.
Oh, perfect.
So over the interims of 15 years, like that in some way, that Novas has always been either a character name of any game characters or a login or different things like that.
Yeah.
So it kind of it grew with me as my confidence in my, because in the first couple of years, like I was terrified. They're going to find out that I'm a fake. I won't be, I won't remember this, and I won't even know why I even try. So I'll just like slink into the background, just run the camera. So it was always that. But I always had this kind of like, Spartan type of attitude. I want the good fight. And then I kind of got to a point where there's got to be more. There's got to be more to this character than just that. Like, what's he do outside of this? How does he like?
What's he do when he's not fighting? Like, what?
Yeah.
Is the fighting the point? Because I know we have some. I think that the trope is called like Blood Knight or something. But they live for the fight. Like they only exist to fight stronger opponents. And you're like, I mean, that's okay on paper for some characters, but when you're, characters living a life and how they interact with other people, like it's not.
Well, yeah, and that's where I came into that. Like, I want a beautiful death.
What's that mean?
What it means is that I don't want a bear pit. I don't want a battlefield. I want that one-on-one, like the battle could be raging around us, and I want that where the whole rest of the world just disappears, and it's just this fight. And then when I started doing Aikido and messing around with the katanas and my fascination with the samurai, and then it kind of like started to come together. Like, oh, there's Bushido. oh, wait a minute, there's a culture behind the Spartans. Like,
So what you're saying is you kind of started off just sort of as an outlet for kind of primal confidence, like
Yes.
brah, but then it started shifting to more gladiatorial, like loose concepts of honor, and like glory,
Yeah.
more glory than honor.
Yeah.
But then it became more honorable, which, like you said, sort of implies a lifestyle. Whereas glory is a thing to achieve.
the moment that it shifted is when I stopped being a fighter. If you read in the Book of the Five Rings with Masamoto, like undefeated, developed a two-sword fighting technique. He died meditating, and he was a Renaissance man with calligraphy and art. Like, the fighter took a breath. And what happens when you what's that breath? What's that quiet moment? What do you do when nothing is happening? And that's where I found my character. That's where I found kind of that's where my glory became. I want to sit around the fire in the tent with the elders and just like hear the stories.
The fighting became just one tentacle on the beast, no longer the point, but it was just an expression. Almost this character, the scope of your character expanded beyond the club's purpose of the fights. It just so happens that he expresses himself in combat within the metrics of the club.
Because that's what we do.
Yes.
But I think that's when existence occurred. When you give them that outside of this, then existence of this character.
When they stop being the Blood Knight.
Yeah.
When their only purpose stops being to fight.
What do you do?
So for mine, kind of how he started. He started in a very not as glamorous way. If we go back to like my original character, let's say I only have one character. I'm only allowed one. For the longest time, he didn't even have a name. I was the bad guy because the club didn't have a good bad guy. There was no one in black. There was no one with red sabers who was frequently showing up. I just filled that role because someone had to. And so I was the nondescript villain who was like really aggressive and fought people, and it went that way for a while. Didn't have a name for years. And then one day, I forget why like I said, it's no fun just to play, the violent, like frothing at the mouth guy. So I'm like, well, anti-heroes are fun. I like people, Vegeta from Dragon Ball and characters like that, they rub you really the wrong way, but sometimes they do things for the right reasons, or like there's more to them just that.
Yeah.
His name's escaping me. Ozzy from Watchmen.
Oh,
he's technically an anti-villain, but there's a very thin line between anti-villain and anti-hero.
Is he the one that ends the film, or is he the?
He's the blonde guy that.
Oh yeah.
Sets off, depending on which version you watch, the various bomb and sundry.
Yeah.
Either the nuclear bomb or the exploding telekinetic squid, which I thought was more of an interesting plot point, but made less sense anyways. And so I really enjoy those characters because you can see the emotions in them, but it's conflict that's not black and white. Heroes typically kind of, straight shot, you got it, like it's coming, but the villains are a little more more interesting to kind of watch. Like you said, you have to have a likable villain, because people have to get invested.
Yeah.
But they still have to be the villain.
Yeah.
And as the villain, I'm like, okay, let's do some interesting. So I made a character who was the result of some tragedy on a space station. A blunder of a Jedi accidentally basically spiraled out a rebellion attack out of control, and it caused the decimation of this entire asteroid-associated colony. And so he, consequence, hated Force users. And that gave me motivation to fight in the club, and that gave him this shades of gray, because he was killing people, and he was there to kill them, but it's not just like, I'm here to kill you.
Well, yeah, you're not a sociopath or a serial killer.
It was hate, it was anger, it was all the sweet suckles of darkness that you need. But he fell out because he was difficult for me to play because he wasn't Force sensitive. This guy was the guy that was the wound in the Force, and I had to play him almost like a Jackie Chan movie, where he would constantly look like he was on the edge of losing, but somehow survive. And unfortunately, and like I said, that was difficult for me to pull off, and I couldn't quite figure out a way to do it.
Yeah.
Also, the other people in the club aren't quite at the level that could help me fake that.
Yeah.
Because it would just end up me looking like I'm trying way too hard against someone else who's moderate effort. So for a couple of reasons, I'm saying it was all their fault, just variety of things. He just kind of had to be scrapped. What stuck with me was the that doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. And so I kind of started to come up with this guy who's what if he's doing it to, because the other guy, the one in the Force, is like, I'm ready the Jedi so no one else has to suffer through what I suffered through. That was kind of his one sentence motivation.
Yeah.
Even if he was lying to himself, that's what he said.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that. Like, what I'm doing this heinous thing because it is the best, I guess, in that sense. I do enjoy anti-villains, I suppose. I'm doing this horrible thing because it will be better in the long run for everyone involved.
Yeah.
And so from there, I was kind of feeling like, how would I do that? How could I forge a character with bonds so strong that they could tolerate straight up like what effectively amounts to genocide? And I've never been much of one for like self-investment as like ego in the traditional sense, like narcissism. So it couldn't be like, oh, I deserve this. I don't think I can pull that off in any capacity. So I'm like, what if he's doing to protect his family? And it led me to Mandalorians, because they're a culture of orphans. You join their family, that's all that matters. No matter where you were born or what you did, like you join the family, you do good for the clan, like that's everything. So I'm like, what if he was orphaned, brought into the Jedi Order, but they stifled him, kept him from being who he felt he wanted to be. Remember kind of what I mentioned before.
Yeah.
So you are everything that you are, and you either accept it or you suffer because you deny parts of yourself.
Yeah.
He felt like parts of him were being denied. All Jedi were being denied because they're supposed to keep all their emotions at the character level, not the personality.
Yeah.
Which he felt was wrong. And so he eventually left after pretty sizable service. It wasn't violently. He didn't murder a bunch of people on the way out. He just left. He joined the Mandalorians, who he had served alongside in his political duties, and he had come to really respect their sense of family. And so he joined them because they accepted him for what he was, eventually. He spent a lot of time with them. He, grew up with family. He became blood brothers with Alex's character. But then a time came when the Jedi were pressing on the Mandalorians more and more, and there were deaths on both sides. And he was approached by who would eventually become his Sith Master, who saw this kind of weakness in him that he could exploit it. If you come with me and I will train you, you will become stronger than you are now. And with this power, you can protect your family. Kind of the same story that Palpatine told Anakin. It's like, I will teach you this stuff and you'll be able to keep her alive. And it got him. He was even willing to kill his own father, not actual blood father, but like an adopted father.
Yeah. His father figure.
Because if I sacrifice, if I do this, if I take this burden upon myself, I can help everyone else. And it's allowed for like utilitarian view, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's how he's thinking about it, and that's the justification he can give himself to keep going. This character is, I don't know, it's been like 5 iterations. There's been times I've just like scrapped him completely.
Yeah.
And then just kind of rebuilt him almost from scratch. There are things that I as a real world individual would like to do in his fighting style that I can't because that's not the character.
Yeah.
And so I just have to tolerate that I have to do those things as Jason, not as Kalsaj.
Yeah.
But that's a story for a different day. Probably we'll talk about that a bit later. So this one is, and it's an iterative process, isn't it? You think of something, you kind of play it out, you talk to other people. You're like, is this how a human would actually react? Is this how real people?
It's always evolution. There's always more, and it usually happens when you think like, in my script writing class, the guy said, and this has always been a thing. Simple story, complicated characters. Make your character now it doesn't mean make them so convoluted that they're just confusing. It means I need to go get a stick of butter. Simple. I'm an agoraphobic. How do I get that stick of butter?
I think of it as you start with something really simple. Like imagine you're in Photoshop. You've got the bottom layer. It's a cloud, let's say, white and black cloud. You make another layer. It's a red cloud in a different shape, and you overlay them, and so now parts of the original cloud are red and highlighted, and you keep doing more and more layers. The thing you end up at the top is really like visually more complex than what you had in the bottom, but it's because those are all lenses of how you that one bottom property is still expressed in that very top layer. It's been visually changed by everything else along the way.
And you can always like put on another layer, and no one will see it until it's placed, but you could just draw lightning bolts coming down, and it somehow touches on the original themes or the original ideas. It's more to it than just going, what's your name, where are you from, what do you do?
I've noticed almost all of my major character development growth has happened outside the club. I don't think there's a single damn time I was actually in practice where I made some important breakthrough on the character's
you never do.
It is like that moment in the shower and you're like, huh, or you're like on a lunch break and you're just looking stuff on Wikipedia and you're like, oh, I didn't know this about the Jedi.
Yeah.
Oh, that would inform his personality a bit. Like, oh.
If like I read like Marcus Aurelius or something, and you just like sit with a quote for a couple days.
You want to fit the quote in, but you can't just like put it on the surface. You have to like figure out how to work it.
Yeah, it's like reading the Tao Te Ching. It said it's so simple, a couple sentences, but it's like, take this, now go sit with it. And it's kind of like when you have something happen in your life and you like replay it to rethink it, and
it becomes a part of you.
It becomes more than a part of you because then it becomes you, and that's kind of like how I see like each of the evolutions.
It informs. Every step informs the next step, and talks about every prior step informs how you can change, all the different possibilities, all the directions you can go, because you can't go backwards. You can only go forwards, but you can turn.
Yeah.
And so each prior step tells you how you can change, and each current step tells you how the character has evolved. Like, I've gone here. I could only have gone here by a certain number of paths.
And the forward step, I always see it as reminds you of where you came from. It's like, oh, I got here only because of this. Sometimes there's events like, oh, there was a rock in the way, so I had to move. You literally had an obstacle in your path that you had to evolve around. Oh, well, look, I'm not just a two-dimensional person. I have
that's
side to side.
Is a character's, I strongly implore having a story arc with some other people, even if you never really act on it, is to have in your head, like, these are how these people are going to change over time from interacting with each other. I had that little mini storyline I told you about with my guy and Jeff's. And that really has more of an impact on Jeff's character than mine, because he's not really going to change with me at all. But for Jeff, like that's a monumental, like, it's a trajectory. You're different at the end than you were at the beginning.
Yeah,
and I think
it's pushed a little bit more past what you thought you were able to do.
And so, I think that's also important because that lets you satisfy, as a creative entity, lets you satisfy wanting to do different things with the characters, but you can't do them at the same time because they're contradictory.
Yeah,
like when people change.
Yeah,
or maybe you do something that your character didn't want to do, and then that leaves a mark.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't just, like, it comes back to the problem of having the all gray character. They're like, well, if, they don't care about anything, or they don't have any allegiances, they do whatever they want, there's no repercussions.
Yeah.
If your character does something they regret, then that will color all their future interactions.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it'll give them hesitation.
It's like, oh, I remember this. This is where I went wrong. Well, I mean, like when I was talking with John and Sawyer, and you saw the things, and then I put like 2 fights before this fight. I just gave them kind of a little backstory, and you could see the acting being formed by just those hypothetical situations where, oh, he's got a lightsaber at my throat. Oh, wait a minute, what happens if I've never lost a fight before? This is a monumental moment right now for me. What do I do? Because I remember when I was young and never being able to win a fight, or I lost my first fight and got beat up. And that's where it makes your fight more dynamic.
In the video I showed you of me and Alex doing our fight, like I said, those characters are blood brothers. They know each other very well.
Mm-hmm.
Their styles are fairly well known to the other person. Mm-hmm. There's that one move where my guy goes in for the spinning slash, and the other dude just catches it, and then just punches him in the face. Mm-hmm. Like that's this kind of like, we've done this before. You're not going to catch me off guard with that if you think you're kidding.
Yeah.
I'd hope that those kind of show in that fight that they were. There's a phrase that comes to mind whenever I think about like creative combat is equal but asymmetric.
Mm-hmm.
Is that neither one of them, mine or his, were better than the other one, but they were just different, and those differences showed in the fight.
Oh yeah.
And that's also really sticking to what you say the character is really hard.
Well, yeah. But when you start to internalize it, I don't want to say it becomes second nature, but it becomes more comfortable.
It becomes familiar.
Yeah.
Well, it becomes a little bit of, I don't say your own thought process, but like I can think a little bit like Kal Sage now.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the real world, that can help you because you've got this personality you've crafted and he's got a purpose. And you're like, well, you know, maybe in the real world I need to behave a bit more like him in this scenario. So let me turn that on for a moment.
Yeah, there've been times where it's worked. And I'm rude in this situation here if I know that I'm right in the long run. Like I actually am correct. I can stand up for myself and not have to like worry if the other person's going to like argue with me because I know I was right in that fight, and the fight worked out better because I told him that move wouldn't work. Well, then I can stand my ground in the real world because I know that this is going to either end two ways: an explosion, or everybody walks away.
And you're making a gamble. Yeah, I know that. We kind of already, the last question I had for just this one segment, I got some more after that. Before we kind of move more broadly speaking, we talked a lot about our individual characters and then a little bit about general. Now we're going to go back to kind of broader general. Before that, the question was kind of what parts of the character grew first, but we sort of talked about that. For you, it was kind of like started off as the confidence, the name
was where I started.
The intent of the character, whereas mine was sort of necessity came first, and then like I had the skeleton. Yours started as like the soul kind of floating around, and you built him a body, whereas mine started off as
I was basically Jarvis,
I guess. Whereas mine started kind of like as a skeleton, and I had to like add detail to him and make him a real thing, not just some like model in a classroom.
Yeah.
Which is just different approaches. So kind of more broadly speaking, and we'll keep and we can talk about character creation as a whole, but also if you could be more specific to Star Wars related stuff, that would be helpful for people are going to be giving this too. So like if you've got resources that have helped you for Star Wars stuff, mention those. Obviously you can speak generally. Anything will be helpful, but like the more specific to Star Wars we are.
Oh yeah.
Like we'll give them nuggets because that they need right now is no one really knows how to go about it.